Hello darlings, I thought I'd make this for you. You know, as a kind of new entree as to what we're going to be doing here on This Much Is True. By the way, placeholder, I'm not sure about that name anymore. I think I've got some more names in my head that I'd prefer. But it's the Thursday morning, so it's between maybe 10 and 11. It might even be earlier. I want you to see, I'm out here on Merrion Strand in Dublin. See all the seabirds. That's Dunleary. And they are the tankers. This shrouded in kind of cloud. Oh, I said kinda again. Is Howth. It's a peninsula. And these are that's the power station. They're known as the Twins. Some people call them the Candy Sticks. And that's a horrific kind of, if you can see it, that's a incinerator. And U2, the band, did some very early publicity shots here with those candy sticks in the background. Sometimes you see Colin Farrell walk down here as well. But yesterday was a rough day in the neighbourhood. We lost a neighbour, essentially. And he was a neighbour I was reasonably close to, certainly on hello and chatting terms too. And once memorably I drank him out of house and home, and a very nice man. He took his own life. And he was only 66. He'd retired a few years ago. He was well-to-do. He had been divorced for many years and his children had grown up. He used to see them when they were younger. But a very nice person. And for those of you who are Irish, Ross O'Carroll Kelly, it's a character, rugby character in Irish lore. That's what he looked like. He's that tall, kind of bullet-headed, nice guy, well-spoken. And it's a doggy. One man and his dog. Anyway, my neighbour came in and found him. Now, he had been suffering acute pain for the last few years, 4 or 5 years maybe. It started in his back and moved into his neck. And from always being a joy to come across, you know, in the latter part, you'd nearly crossed the road because you didn't know what mood he was going to be in. But he was in agony. He was in pain and he was rattling around in that house by himself. Everything really to live for, because 66 is relatively young, and a man of means. And I just stood outside his door this morning, said a little prayer. Took a long time to get to sleep last night because literally within 40 yards of where I was resting my head, you realised that somebody earlier in the day had gone through the ultimate in despair. And you know, sometimes the signs are there. For instance, he had this amazing BMW, and a few weeks back, and it was one of those big ones, he gave it to his son. And I remember doing an interview with Aware, which is a depression organisation aimed at fighting depression. Years ago, a radio interview, and the lady said, signs are there. People begin to settle their affairs. They give stuff away. And that was a big give. So it would make you ponder the transience of it all. And also, I mean, I wrote in my diary, get off your arse and start to live, you know? Because you just don't know. That guy, I would not have expected that, but in retrospect, I could see he was going from bad to worse. And maybe a week or two ago, I kind of nodded to him as we passed by. Anyway, I won't name him, but Godspeed. Talk to you guys in the studio. And magically we return to the studio. Hello. It is now Sunday afternoon, and as promised, it'll be Sunday and then a quick kind of catch up on, I said kind of again, on Wednesdays. So, temperature is like 11 degrees and it's extremely wet and windy. Indeed, there is a status orange warning on the south and southeast coast of Ireland, where I join you from, wherever you are this morning or tonight, whatever time zone you might be in. So, yeah, I just came from the removal of that gentleman who passed. You know, the little bit where they lie in. And I said to my wife, I said, look, I've been at several of these, you know, when people are lying in an open casket. And I said, just today, I just don't want to do it. I don't want to see my neighbour like that. And she was good about it, as she always is. And then later on, I thought, in the words I simply read, I want to do the right thing. Maybe I should just show up to pay my respects. And I regretted it straight away. It was him, but it wasn't him. It didn't look a bit like him. And that kind of pink, waxy, wainy pallor. And Francis said to me, are you all right? And I said, no, I just had to get out. Without being dramatic, gone with the wind, running out of the place. I just had to go. And I decided to do my afternoon walk straight from the parlour. So that wasn't easy. It's like almost this pathetic fallacy has been going on in the last few days, where when he passed on Wednesday and Thursday, it just never stopped raining. And then today it was the same thing. So I don't want to go on and on about it, but 5 doors down, 40 yards away, you know, this was happening. Right, shall we have a little bit of retro?
I've pounded the road from coast to coast, Yorkie and me rolling on. 'Cause a long day's run can be short on fun, without Yorkie to help me along. Good, rich and thick, a milk chocolate brick, each bite a chunky big mouthful. Yorkie's the shape that real milk chocolate ought to be. So when I still that big old mill, there's plenty more in store for me from that chunky bar of mine.
Roundtree's Yorkie, chunky milk chocolate, or peanuts in milk chocolate.
Ah, yes, if you rewind and look closely, you can see a gap in the truck driver's teeth, so the Yorkie must be having an effect. And what about that, eh? And the Yorkies, they've shrunk in size, I think, since that thing was made. You need to take your tooth out with them. What about him up in the cab looking at the blonde in the MG Spitfire, whatever it was, dirty bastard, trying to look up her house coat. I don't know. What was it like back then? Very innocent, actually. That dates from 1980. I want to talk about a few things today, very small stuff. And childhood trauma is one of them. And I'm not making light of this. I would just like to relate something that happened to me. And it was a repressed memory that was suddenly, many, many years after the event, brought into a rich focus. And what it was is, do you guys remember, I don't know, about 6-7 years ago, there was this phenomenon about clowns. People were dressing up as clowns and robbing places, and appearing at your ring.com doorbell at night with clown faces and clowns jumping out from the forest and frightening people. This kind of fetish, if you like, for fright and dressing up as a clown. And people were freaked out. People were freaked out by clowns with McDonald's clowns type faces. And of course the movie It, was it? That was like really gutter stuff, quite literally. Because he was in the gutter, the clown looking up at the kids. Remember that? Really scary. So that thing happened with the clowns. Send in the clowns. Somebody took them at their word. And I was walking along one day, early 50s, and it came back to me. It came back. Something I had repressed since I'd say 1967 or 68, which would put me, 5, 6, 7 years of age. 5 or 6. And I think we just got back from Israel at the time. I can't be that precise. Because we got back and the build up to the 6-day war. Dad stayed on. We came home. As you can tell, I was an army brat. But anyway, we lived in this place called Kilkenny, and the circus came to town, as it always did back then, before you were, it was entertaining to go at a lion with a chair and to make elephants stand these days, all on their hind legs, and these days not really. A whipping at tigers as well was another great sport. Tiger baiting. I'm being a little bit facetious there. I love my animals. In particular, my cat. Do you want to have a quick look at my cat? Here he is. He's a bit of a TikTok star right now.
Morning, Marvin. How are you doing? I suppose sitting in that orange crate box of yours, you think that protects you, do you? What is it like? What is it? You're always in that box. I come down in the morning and you're sitting in it. Even 2 a.m. in the morning sometimes I find you sitting in it. You're not even in your basket. What's that about? I'm talking to you, Marvin. You think you're like commander-in-chief or something, sitting in your little orange crate? Yeah? Oh, well. A boy needs his space, I guess. Say goodbye to everybody on TikTok. Okay. Well, folks, he could be there for hours. I don't know what it's about, but it makes him happy, doesn't it? Okay.
Sorry for that interlude, but I had to show you Marvin at his best. Where was I? The clown. So I'm walking along one day, all these decades later, and I get this vivid flashback, and a painful one as well. So I'm in Kilkenny at the circus, and during the break, I'm outside with another little gaggle of kids, and there's there's a fence, like a real normal farmy type fence, and across the way some of the clowns, the circus performers are there, and they're having, minding their own business, and they're having a fag in the smoking sense. What other type is there? I hear you titter in the cheap seats. And we started as kids, we go, Mr. Clown, you're not so funny now, ha, 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 ha. And we were basically jeering at these, guys in their 20s and 30s probably, or even 40s that have been in the circus for years, trying to have a bit of peace. And us little brats in our shorts and cheeky little gobs on us were pissing them off, So at one point, I got over the fence, trying to be the brave guy, and I ran towards the clown, going, "No, that stupid clown, you that clown." Well, if I did, one of them, a particularly mean clown, looked at me, and he'd had enough. And I have then this flashback, which came to me, as I said, in my 50s. I'd suppressed it. I know I had. Of in almost slow-mo, this clown face coming towards me, to carry me home, actually not, but to root me with his clown-sized boots right up, bend it like Beckham, Roy of the Rover style, glancing kick right up my buttocks, right up my hole, as we say in Ireland, and a searing pain as I was lifted by the clown-type shoe. It's like one of those clown balloons. You see the shape of it, like right up the hole, scorcher style, and lifted me with this boot, and I eventually made it back over the fence. But I remember distinctly the tears of pain coming to my eyes. Now, these days, that guy would have been up on a charge of assaulting a kid, bad and all as I was being a brat. But yeah, a clown, or as my wife says, because she's from the north of Ireland, a clown took after ye. So it's slow motion, the clown, and me suddenly talking about boots up the hole and painful memories. I was trying to think back to when I got a real emotional blow, and I had to go back into my 20s. When someone does something and probably being cruel to be kind, but really should they have been that cruel? I don't know if you've ever been the recipient of an emotional blow. Of course, the ultimate one would be maybe, I don't know, a betrayal or of some kind of whatever. And the sad thing is, and the ironic thing is, if you hang around long enough, you will get to wink at the world. Hopefully you will. And you'll go, what? Let me put it in context for you. So, I was in my 20s, and there's no other way of saying it, but I'd gotten dumped by someone I had a lot of time for, and probably kidded myself that I was in love with. I probably was at the time. But I'd been acting the idiot, and I got my comeuppance one day. I got the Dear John phone call or whatever it was, and I was already under a lot of pressure from work. So it was like this double whammy. And I had, I was a bit of a whiz kid when I was younger, but it wasn't, it was getting tarnished. I was getting burnt out, essentially, in sales. And I also stupidly believed, like a lot of guys believe, that they are their job, and if their job isn't good, they're not good, If I had more belief in myself, I don't think this breakup would have necessarily happened. So I was under pressure. I got the boot, not from the job. I got dumped. And I had an apartment at the time on the sea side, beside the sea, in Ireland and in Dublin. And I found myself on the dole, which was okay. You wouldn't believe what happened to me on the dole. Some very, I don't know. No, I'm not going to go there. I got very lucky when I was on the dole. But at that particular time, I was heartbroken. And I'm putting a brave face on it now, but I remember being really broken-hearted. So much so, if you've ever been there, have you been so bad that it's almost impossible to function? Your mind is, sometimes when you're in love as well, it's like the same thing. Your mind is on that person 24/7. And my mind was on just maybe I could salvage this relationship. And I made the mistake of putting my feelings down in writing and really begging for renewal and forgiveness and can we try again stuff. Let's go round again, please. It was heart on the... It's funny now, but it was heart on the sleeve stuff, really putting yourself out there and saying, please come back. Please just come back. And after one of those days of being on the dole, I came back to where we all probably have ended up, the digs or the little apartment that I had, which, the landlords would be cheap. So, there'd be modicums of basic furniture within the place, And there's always that smell, that kind of rising damp smell in these old Georgian Edwardian houses, which it was one of those. And I can remember coming in, and I can remember coming in through the hallway and this big door thudding behind me. And suddenly there's a letter on the ground with my name and address on it, and I kind of recognized the handwriting, and my heart leapt. And I thought, Jesus, because this was all before email and texting and mobile. It was even before mobile phones. And so there was a fairly big envelope, and I went, oh, great, Jesus, some response here. And I opened it, and within the envelope was my own original envelope with my letter in it. And that was like a kick in the balls. I still think about it. I understand it. I do understand it. Cruel to be kind. And I'd kind of heard about that happening. But until it happened to me, I think, you know, you don't want to be a Klingon. And someone has to scrape you off, get the fuck out of my life. But I think if she had just ignored it, I would have been better. Because you're down and then suddenly you get a kick when you're down. So I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like that. By the way, if you're watching these, please like and subscribe if they do anything for you. Do it now, because it'll help the algorithm. And, you know, I do see some new subscribers as well, and welcome aboard. And, of course, hello to the usual crew. You all know who you are. Indeed, Sue, I was thinking about you during the week because, and you as well, Nigel, I watched a documentary on the miners' strike. It was hard in 1985. And how the schism had happened within the communities that goes on till this day. I digress, but that's something we need to talk about at some stage. I didn't realise how deep those wounds ran. And speaking of, that was me, like, eviscerated from that relationship. And I still think back, and it was like almost yesterday. And I deserved it. So I'm not looking for sympathy. By the way, so yeah, like and subscribe. Also, I'd love to hear from you. Okay, if you can comment below, fair enough. But I do wish you would use This Much Is True at protonmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. This Much Is True at protonmail.com. Yes, so that's pretty much all I've got to say to you guys tonight. And anything else, is there? God, the weather has been so bad. And yet, there's a part of me that likes it that way. You know, when you're cozy. But it's just with this business in the neighbourhood, it's been a really rough week. Because without going all over that story again, there's always been, we all know each other. In fact, we had a community clean-up during the summer, and it was great to meet some new people that had moved into the neighbourhood. But this gentleman that passed, there was 4 of us. There was 5 of us, actually, that were like a little nucleus within our terraced houses. My neighbour and his wife, me and my wife, and our friend who passed, because he just had enough down the end. So even though we know and we love all our other neighbours, it was because we'd been there so long. And he used to, up until they were too old, you know, every Christmas he'd pop around and he'd have something for our girls. It wasn't easy on him. He was in a lot of pain. Physically, ultimately led to the emotional, and he just had it. So don't take your health for granted, whatever you do. I know I speak about my own condition at times, but try not to take it for granted. The ironic thing was, a day later, I'm out going for my morning walk, and I bump into a doctor who's local, but he was the doctor who originally said to me, I think you need to go to hospital, and that resulted in my heart operation. And he was always a fine man. He always played tennis and everything. And he's about our own age, 60s, early 60s. And for the last few years, he's had some condition. And he's in agony a lot of the time. In fact, he was saying to me, because he's a doctor, he uses medical terms. I don't understand the terminology. But he was explaining to me that he was considering an operation. And by the way, he looked about a third of himself. You know, he had that pallor, and he looked about a third alive than the fully alive guy I used to know. Lovely man, looks a bit like Chris de Burgh, that kind, you know. And quite intense as well. He'd tell you what was what. And he loved his bloods. He used to always make sure he had the bloods. And he'd be checking the bloods, and he'd be boring you with the bloods. The bloods! The bloods! And he said to me, I might consider an operation whereby I get this pump sewn into me, and it, at regular intervals, spreads morphine, which sounds kind of cool if you've ever been on morphine. But morphine for his arms and down his spine, because that's how much pain he's in. By the way, person of the week goes to, and I'm not going to get into politics because I hate it, but I have to mention, is it Rosie Duffield? She was an MP in the Labour Party, and she resigned about 48 hours ago due to principle, where she didn't like Keir Starmer, as she said, people who already have more money than the average person, sticking their fucking nose in the trough, excuse my language, for gifts from Ali or whoever that might be. So a lady of principle, and someone said to me at the breakfast table, oh no, maybe she shouldn't have done that. We had a guest staying over. You know, you can fight these things from the inside. I said, no, she was right. You know, when Labour came in, we're going to undo all the sleaze of the they're all of the Conservatory Party. They're all the bloody same, and they're the same here. They're probably worse here. So well done, you, young Rosie. Well, you're in your 50s, or you're lovely, nice looking lady as well. You know, just see you on Wednesday. Goodbye.